Hey, curious minds! Welcome to this intellectual journey. Today, we're going to dismantle one of the most influential structures in our lives, one we often take for granted. The very structure that shaped us, molded us, and perhaps without us even realizing it, also limited us in ways we're only just beginning to grasp. Have you ever stopped to wonder, what's the real purpose of school? The answer we were given is simple: to prepare us for the future. But what if I told you that the original design of modern education didn't prioritize your creativity, your critical thinking, or your personal happiness? The truth is far darker. Think about it for a moment. Rows of desks all facing the same direction. Bells dictating the start and end of every activity, fragmenting knowledge. Obedience to authority hailed as the supreme virtue. Does this sound like a place that fosters innovation or something else entirely? Perhaps an assembly line. Here's the hook. The education system we know today is, for the most part, a product of the Industrial Revolution. Its primary goal wasn't to create artists, philosophers, or revolutionary scientists. Its objective was to mass-produce something entirely different, something the new industrial economy desperately needed. It needed workers. It needed punctual, obedient individuals capable of performing repetitive tasks for hours without questioning the system. It needed perfectly oiled cogs for the machinery of industrial progress. And to create these cogs, they designed a factory of minds, which they called school. Let's travel back to the 19th century. Cities are booming, factories dominate the landscape, and a completely new workforce is required. Agricultural cycles or artisanal craftsmanship no longer cut it. A mass production mindset was needed, and that mindset had to be systematically instilled from childhood. Thus, the Prussian model of education, focused on discipline and standardization, became the global standard. It was designed to teach obedience to state authority and to accustom children to a controlled, hierarchical work environment. Individuality was seen as a glitch in the system, not a goal. The curriculum was divided into isolated subjects with no apparent connection. History on one side, math on the other. This hinders holistic thinking, the ability to see the complete system and how its parts interconnect. It's easier to manage specialists than thinkers who understand the bigger picture. Evaluation was standardized through exams, tests where there's only one correct answer. This teaches a very dangerous lesson, that complex problems have simple, unique solutions and that mistakes are to be punished. Creativity by its very nature thrives on exploration and error. Studies in cognitive neuroscience show us that the brain learns best through play, curiosity, and emotional connection. The fear of failure, a constant in the grading system, actually inhibits the neural processes associated with deep learning and creative thought. It teaches us not to take risks. Now, the world has changed drastically. The industrial era has given way to the information age and artificial intelligence. The repetitive tasks we were trained for are now being automated. The system prepared us for a world that, ironically, no longer exists. Today, the most valuable skills are creativity, complex problem-solving, emotional intelligence, and adaptability. Skills that the traditional education system not only fails to foster, but, in many cases, actively suppresses in its quest for uniformity and control. The focus on rote memorization of facts is a clear example. We're forced to retain dates, formulas, and names, information we now have at our fingertips on any device. We're taught what to think, but rarely how to think, how to question, or how to synthesize information. Think about the concept of the school bell. For over a decade of our lives, a bell tells us when to start thinking, when to stop, when to eat, and when to go home. This conditions our minds to rely on external cues to manage our time and concentration instead of developing internal self-discipline. This leads us to a phenomenon psychologists know well: learned helplessness. When a person is repeatedly subjected to an aversive stimulus they can't control, they eventually stop trying to escape it. The school system, by penalizing error and deviation, can breed intellectual passivity. This isn't about blaming teachers. Most of them are passionate individuals who entered the profession with a desire to inspire. However, they too are products and prisoners of the same system, forced to follow a rigid curriculum and prepare students for standardized tests. Conformity is the golden rule. Dress like everyone else. Think as you're told. Follow the preset path. Graduate, get a job, fit in. Any deviation from this norm is often met with suspicion, both from the institution and from peers themselves, who learn to police each other. Early specialization is another tool. By pushing us to choose a career path too soon, the system limits our exploration of different fields of knowledge. This creates experts in very specific areas, but often unable to connect their knowledge with other domains, losing sight of the big picture. Curiosity is the engine of genuine learning. Yet, in a classroom where time is limited and off-topic questions are seen as a distraction, childlike curiosity gradually fades. We learn that it's more efficient and safer to await the teacher's answer than to seek it out for ourselves. The result is a population that, to a great extent, has outsourced its critical thinking abilities. We're taught to accept information given to us by authority figures, be it a teacher, a textbook, or later a media outlet, without the habit of questioning or independently verifying it. This creates a painful paradox in the modern world. Businesses and society clamor for innovators and leaders, but the system supposedly designed to produce them is built to churn out followers. There's a fundamental disconnect between what the system produces and what the future truly needs. Even the way the physical classroom space is organized reinforces this idea. The teacher at the front as the sole possessor of knowledge and students as passive recipients. This one-to-many model of information transmission is obsolete in a world where knowledge is collaborative and decentralized. And here we arrive at the deepest, most disturbing point of all. The climax of this revelation? The hidden trap of the education system isn't just about preparing you for an obsolete job. The true underlying goal has to do with governance and social control. It's a question of power. A population educated to obey, not to question dominant narratives, and to see the world in simple right and wrong categories, is a much easier population to govern. Critical thinking is, by its very nature, a threat to any power structure based on blind obedience. The system doesn't necessarily aim to create informed and active citizens, but rather predictable subjects. It fosters a dependency mindset, where we expect the government or corporations to solve our problems, instead of empowering us to collectively create our own solutions. This is why philosophy, art, and the humanities are often the first subjects to be cut during budget crises. They don't produce direct economic benefits, and more dangerously for the system, they teach people to ask fundamental questions about purpose, justice, and power. The fear of uncertainty is another product of this system. By getting us used to always having a curriculum, a syllabus, and a guide, we develop an aversion to the void, to the unknown. Real life, however, is chaotic and unpredictable. Creativity is born precisely from knowing how to navigate that uncertainty. Competition is another pillar. We're taught to compete for the best grades, the best positions, the best accolades. This fragments solidarity and makes us view our peers as rivals instead of collaborators. It prevents the formation of true collective intelligence and isolates us. So are we doomed? Are we simply products of social programming initiated in childhood? Not necessarily. The first step to escaping any trap is realizing you're in it. Awareness of this design is the first act of true intellectual liberation. True learning, the kind that transforms you, almost always happens outside the classroom walls. It happens when you become passionate about a topic and research it on your own. When you travel and expose yourself to new cultures. When you have deep conversations that challenge your deeply held beliefs. We must become lifelong self-learners. Formal education gives you a diploma, but self-learning gives you freedom. It's the process of unlearning the limitations imposed on you and then rebuilding your own framework of knowledge based on curiosity and direct experience. Question everything, especially the things you were told to take for granted. Why is history told this way? What economic interests lie behind this policy? What philosophical assumptions underpin this scientific theory? Questions are more important than answers. Foster the interconnection of ideas. Read about science, art, history, and psychology. Observe how patterns repeat across different disciplines. True genius doesn't lie in the depth of a single field, but in the ability to build bridges between seemingly unrelated islands of knowledge. Embrace failure as a learning tool. The brightest scientists, the most innovative artists, they all share a long history of mistakes. Every error is a data point. It's a compass that tells you which path not to take, bringing you one step closer to the solution that does work. Seek out mentors and communities, not just teachers. Learn from people who are doing things in the real world. Join discussion groups, collaborate on projects. Learning is a social act. We sharpen each other's ideas like swords. The conclusion of this journey is clear. The education system isn't your enemy, but it's not necessarily your ally in the pursuit of your full potential either. It's a tool, and like any tool, it was designed for a specific purpose in a specific era. Now, that tool is obsolete. This isn't about abandoning education, but complementing it, hacking it, taking what works and discarding what limits. The ultimate responsibility for your education doesn't lie with any institution, it lies with you. It's yours to build or to passively accept. The ultimate goal shouldn't be to have a head full of facts, but a well-formed mind. A mind that is flexible, critical, curious, and above all free. Free from the dogmas others tried to install within it. That is the true graduation we should all aspire to. So, the next time you reflect on your school years, don't do so only with nostalgia or resentment. Look at it through the eyes of an analyst, a detective, identify the patterns, understand the design, and from there, consciously decide which parts of that programming you want to keep and which you want to rewrite. Let's remember that many of history's brightest minds from Einstein to Turing, often clashed with the formal education system, not because they weren't intelligent, but because their intelligence didn't fit into the standardized box offered to them. They saw beyond the classroom walls. The pressure for academic performance often pulls us away from our true passions. The system asks us what we want to be in terms of a profession, instead of asking what problems fascinate us or what kind of activities make us feel alive. The what is prioritized over the why. This industrial model also ignores the diversity of intelligences. Research from Harvard University, for instance, proposed the theory of multiple intelligences, suggesting that logical, mathematical, and linguistic intelligence, the most valued in school, are just two of many other ways to be brilliant. The kinesthetic intelligence of the athlete, the spatial intelligence of the architect, the musical intelligence of the composer, or the interpersonal intelligence of the leader. All these are forms of genius that the system often marginalizes or dismisses as mere hobbies, leaving vast human potential untapped simply because it can't be measured on a multiple-choice test. Passivity is another subtle consequence. We become accustomed to knowledge being something handed to us, poured into us. This atrophies the muscle of initiative. In the real world, knowledge isn't handed out, it's sought after, pursued, and conquered through experimentation and effort. The current system focuses too much on answers and too little on the beauty of questions. A good question is a tool for exploration, a key that unlocks doors to new worlds. By giving us pre-formulated questions and answers, the system robs us of the thrill of true discovery. Think about play. For children, playing isn't a distraction, it's their primary method of exploring the world. It's how they test hypotheses, learn social rules, and develop creativity. By rigidly separating learning time from playtime, school sends a misleading message about how learning truly works. The learning environment is also unnatural. Hours spent sitting under artificial light, disconnected from the natural world. Studies in environmental psychology show that contact with nature improves concentration, reduces stress, and stimulates creativity. School is, in essence, a sensory deprivation environment. The rise of online education and open learning resources is a silent rebellion against this model. It allows people to learn at their own pace, follow their curiosity, and access knowledge from the world's brightest minds without the filters and limitations of the formal institution. So the task for our generation is monumental. It's to design new learning models for the digital age that prioritize curiosity over conformity, collaboration over competition, and critical thinking over blind obedience. It's a complete reinvention of the concept of education itself. Education shouldn't be something that happens to you during your first 20 years. It should be a lifelong process, an attitude of constant curiosity and humility. The world is too complex and changes too quickly to rely on a fixed body of knowledge acquired in youth. The current system often confuses schooling with education. Schooling is attending an institution and following its rules. Education is the process of awakening and developing the potential of a mind. It's possible to go through years of schooling and emerge with very little real education. The trap, ultimately, is the illusion that the path is already laid out. That if you follow the rules and get the grades, success and fulfillment are guaranteed. Real life is far wilder, and it requires you to draw your own map instead of following one handed to you by others. True education empowers you. It doesn't give you a fish, it teaches you how to fish. It gives you the mental tools to analyze the world for yourself, to build your own arguments, and to navigate complexity without needing an authority to tell you what to think or how to feel. This system also creates an aversion to deep reading. By forcing us to skim texts, to extract information for an exam, the pleasure of reading as a form of dialogue with history's greatest minds is lost. Reading becomes a chore, not an adventure. Intellectual conformity is subtle. It's not that you're forbidden from thinking radical ideas, it's that those ideas don't even occur to you. The curriculum defines the boundaries of what's considered reasonable thought, and anything outside that window is tacitly ignored or ridiculed. Age segregation is another control tactic. By grouping people by their birth date, the natural transmission of knowledge between generations is prevented. In traditional societies, children learn from teenagers, teenagers from adults, and adults from elders. This age segregation also fosters a culture of constant comparison with your peers. Your worth is measured in relation to people who have exactly the same experience and age as you, creating an artificial bubble that doesn't reflect the diversity of the real world. The lack of financial literacy is another deliberate blind spot. We're taught complex algebra, but not how a budget works, compound interest, or investments. This creates adults who are highly productive in their jobs, but often illiterate in managing their own capital, keeping them dependent. Similarly, emotional intelligence is almost completely ignored. We're not taught to understand or manage our own emotions, nor to empathize with those of others. This deficiency is at the root of many social and personal problems, from anxiety to the inability to collaborate effectively. The system rewards speed over depth. The one who finishes the exam first is often considered the smartest. But deep thought, reflection, and deliberation take time. The system trains us for quick answers, not necessarily well thought out ones. Forced group work often doesn't teach real collaboration. It teaches how to deal with non-contributing team members, how to superficially divide tasks, and how to present a coherent final product. True collaboration is a synergy of minds, not a mere division of labor. Reliance on external validation is perhaps the deepest scar. From childhood, we learn to seek approval from authority figures to know if our work is good. This can create adults who lack an internal compass, who measure their self-worth by likes, promotions, or the opinions of others. True critical thinking involves being comfortable with ambiguity and doubt. The education system, on the contrary, teaches us to seek certainty. It gives us the illusion that the world is an ordered and knowable place, when in reality it's full of paradoxes, contradictions, and mysteries. The system teaches you to follow recipes. If you do A, B, and C, you'll get result D. This works for basic chemistry, but not for life. Life isn't a recipe, it's a laboratory of improvisation. It requires you to invent your own formulas as you go, often without knowing what the outcome will be. Uniformity of content is another problem. It's assumed that all children across an entire country must learn the same things at the same time, regardless of their individual interests, cultural context, or unique talents. It's the factory logic applied to human development, and it's inherently dehumanizing. Creativity isn't a subject that can be taught in 1 hour a week. It's a way of seeing the world, an attitude of curiosity and playfulness that should permeate all areas of learning. By isolating it in art classes, the system tells a child that creativity is an extra, not something fundamental. The knowledge that's valued is almost exclusively theoretical and abstract. Practical knowledge, the kind acquired hands-on, is often dismissed. This creates an intellectual elite disconnected from the physical processes that sustain the world, and a working class whose wisdom goes unrecognized. The system teaches us to be consumers of culture, not producers. We're taught to analyze others' poems, study others' paintings, and interpret others' music. Rarely are we given the time and confidence to create our own works in a serious and sustained way. This structure also teaches us a linear way of thinking. Introduction, development, conclusion, cause and effect. But the world isn't linear. It's a complex system, a knot of feedback loops and emergent effects. We need systemic thinking, not linear thinking. History is presented as a series of dates and events, not as a web of conflicting narratives. We're given the victor's version, a simplified story that justifies the current state of affairs. We're not taught to read history critically, to seek out the silenced voices. Science is taught as a body of established facts, not as a process of doubt and discovery. We're shown the final results, not the tortuous path, full of errors and debates that led to them. This gives us a false image of science as a source of absolute and unquestionable truth. The trap is so effective because it convinces us it's for our own good. It tells us that discipline and conformity are necessary for success. We internalize the system's rules to the point where we become our own jailers, punishing ourselves for straying from the path. Breaking free from this programming requires an act of courage. The courage to look foolish asking obvious questions. The courage to pursue an interest that has no immediate economic application. The courage to define success on your own terms, not on those society imposes on you. We must learn to play again, to experiment without a fixed goal, to combine ideas in strange ways, to allow ourselves to be beginners. The beginner's mind, as it's called in Zen Buddhism, is a mind open to all possibilities, not the expert's mind that already believes it knows everything. Don't wait for anyone's permission to truly educate yourself. The internet has torn down the walls that once guarded knowledge. The best libraries, courses from the most prestigious universities, and expert communities are just a click away. The only remaining barrier is your own initiative. Build your own personal curriculum. Identify the skills you want to develop, the questions that obsess you, and the topics that ignite your passion, and then design your own course of study, become the architect of your own mind. The world already has enough echoes. What it desperately needs are more original voices. Voices unafraid to challenge the consensus, to propose bold ideas, and to speak for those who cannot. Your unique voice is the most valuable resource you have. So the question isn't whether the education system is good or bad. The question is, now that you understand its design and limitations, what are you going to do about it? How will you reclaim sovereignty over your own mind? The game is on. This knowledge isn't meant to breed cynicism, but to empower. It gives you a new perspective to understand your own struggles, those of others, and those of society as a whole. It's a map that shows you where the traps are so you can navigate them with greater wisdom. Ultimately, the most important education is the one that teaches you to know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your biases, and your passions. Because only from that core of self-knowledge can you begin to build an authentic life and contribute meaningfully to the world. We've journeyed from the 19th century factory to the traps within our own thinking. We've seen how a system designed for obedience clashes with a future that demands creativity. The conclusion is inescapable. We must become the leaders of our own education. This isn't about a loud revolution, but a silent evolution. It's the sum of millions of individual decisions to think a little more critically, to learn something new every day out of pure curiosity, to question one more assumption. That's how a paradigm shifts from the inside out. The system prepared you to be a cog, but you are so much more than that. You are a mind with almost infinite potential, capable of learning, creating, and transforming reality. Don't let an obsolete model define the limits of what you can become. The next time you face a problem, ask yourself if you're approaching it as you were taught in school, searching for the single correct answer, or if you're allowing yourself to explore, play with ideas, and consider solutions that seem impossible. The answer to that question will define your future. Your mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. And the spark for that fire won't come from an institution, but from your own will to know, to understand, and to grow beyond the boundaries that have been imposed on you. The true purpose of education isn't to give you a means to make a living, but to give you a life worth living, a life of curiosity, wonder, connection, and continuous growth, a life where you are the author, not just a character in someone else's script. Remembering this is your greatest defense. Knowing that the system has a design allows you to navigate it without being its victim. You can play its game when necessary, but never forget there's a much bigger, more important game to play, that of your own authentic self-realization. In conclusion, current education, in its traditional form, often prepares us more to be cogs than to be creative. But knowing this truth isn't an endpoint, it's a starting point. It's the key that unlocks the door to your real self. The question is, will you dare to turn it and step out? Thank you for joining me on this deep dive, for daring to question the foundations of our society, and for keeping the flame of curiosity alive. It's been an honor to share this space and time with you. Now that you know the trap, how can we collectively escape it? What ideas do you have for reinventing learning? Subscribe for more intellectual journeys and share your theories in the comments below. The dialogue is the next step.